But I think that the original teachings of the Buddha was, that life is suffering. And that suffering, one of the aspects of suffering is separation. Right? We suffer when we separate from others. When suddenly there is, I'm not you, And we see that all the time. What happens, the suffering and the greed and anger that comes out of that, when we don't see ourselves as connected, we just read the paper every day. And you can see the results of, seeing the other person as other. So I think one of the great teachings of the Buddha was that, he was suggesting that, well, the suffering really comes from when we're not seeing ourselves as one person. Not realizing that when I hurt, you hurt. Right? Well, the Bible is a wonderful book, right? And for my own reading and pleasure in reading it. But there's throughout the Bible, there are these moments of intolerance that, are for interpretation. It's been interpreted throughout time and also edited throughout time and changed throughout time. So I never see things as a fixed thing. And I think the problem that suffering arises when we want to grasp to something as a fixed thing. So thinking of that something that was written long ago and treating it as a fixed thing. So it makes us so tight, like a fist, like this is what it says. There's all that tightness. So what happens if you just say, does this make sense for this time? Does this make sense for people of our time? There's many things that it says in the Bible but to think of things, in my point of view, in my life, is I like to think of when I'm getting really tight, I try to ooh, that's a place to soften, right? I don't want to live so hard. So from a contemplative point of view, I feel like, well, that's a painful thing to say. There's no kind of relationship to the particular. So what about these people that I know? Do they need to be put to death? Oh, they just want to, go to the prom together, or this kid just wants to love somebody, or, I work with so many people and where just the feeling of shame that comes over because the larger culture has this, painful bias against them. It just hurts people. And there are, so many gay kids who are killing themselves because of things like Proposition 8, where, a whole state is saying, yes, it's okay to, on one hand, to give chickens more rights, and then at the same time saying that gay people should have less rights. So the same person is voting for both of those things. So it's important I think for all of us, for me, to really think about how I don't want to make the people who did that other. What about the point in myself where I hold those contradictions? Or as Whitman would talk about, I have contradictions, right? And about celebrating ourselves. And so I think the challenge of this movement to get equal rights is not to polarize others, not to make people other, but to see their suffering. So I think that the practice for me is really about kind of quieting down so that, and remembering throughout the day that, oh, wait a second, right? We're all in this together. And how we behave from that kind of sense, or how I behave from that awareness, is very different than if I think of everyone else as objects. Ones I like, ones I don't like, right? But really seeing us all on the same ship.